Today. Uh, we are recording the session and we'll capture as much information as we can. We're going to try to do some breakouts today. Those may be a little bit challenging. Fortunately, I have the breakout room and Zoom extraordinaire, Nan, working with me today, and she's going to help me make all this happen. So if you would, please just put your name and information, institution and position in the chat so that we can capture that and know who was here and how they participated and all those kinds of things. And I'm really excited today about what we're going to be talking about. This is the last of our three communities of practice that we were going to do in the spring, and we're going to finish on a very high note. We're going to talk about student journey mapping and adult learners. And Nicole is here with us today. She's been doing this work in Kentucky. And, Nicole, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you do your thing because there's nothing more I need to say. Okay.
Sorry, I'm like two monitors and trying to make everything work. Well, good morning. I am so grateful to be here, and I really thank Dallas and Lily and the collaborative for having me and asking me to talk a little bit about my work with Kentucky. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. I have some slides. It's not a big group, so I'm gonna kind of keep it a little bit more free flowing. And if you have questions as I'm going through, please feel free to pop those in chat or unmute your mic. Dallas, if you wouldn't mind just kind of keeping an eye on chat and letting me know, because I won't be able
Sure.
to look at both.
Yeah.
So let's get started.
All right.
Hold on, there we go. Just you can see my screen okay, Dallas?
Yes, very well.
Great. Okay, so we're going to talk, title of this this presentation is Mapping for Success, Identifying Barriers in Adult Learner Onboarding. So I have just wrapped up the majority of a project that I've been doing with the collaborative on adult learner onboard. It's called the Adult Learner Onboarding Project. And so I'm going to take you through some of that, what we did, what we learned, and then focus on one aspect of that, which was student journey mapping. So just going to get started. Let's see, sorry. Okay, so just like I said, I'm going to go through an introduction. I'll let you know kind of a little bit more about me. Then we're just going to do a little bit of an overview on the Adult Learner Onboarding Project, and then go through student journey mapping. Okay, so I'm Nicole McWhirter. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm joining you today from Denver, Colorado, which means I'm on mountain time and it's 8 o'clock in the morning. So I will have coffee and I might not be fully awake, so I apologize if I stumble over my words. But I have worked in higher education for the majority of my career, about 15 or more years. I currently really focus, I'm a consultant now, but I focus a lot on continuous improvement. I have expertise in lean tools and methodologies, and a passion and focus on human-centered design, which means that all the work that I do really puts people at the center as opposed to processes or systems. And you'll see student journey mapping is a great tool for being able to do that. I have a career that spans starting in institutional research and ending in information technology, and have done pretty much anything that you can imagine around administration for higher education. And through that work, have done a lot of mapping and process mapping and student journey mapping for student success. So I have taught and ran facilitated sessions now in Kentucky twice, once on transfer and this one on adult learners. So like I said before, I've had such a wonderful time getting to know Kentucky, getting to know your state and your people, and working with you all. So Just a bit of an overview of the project, like where did this project come from? Why, it didn't just come from nowhere. So this image is of the strategic plan. The Kentucky CPE released it in February of 2022, and it's not something that you were probably familiar with it. I just wanted to point out, you all know the whole, 60-30 sorry, the 60-30 goal that you all have. But really specifically, we know that that Kentucky needs to engage more adult learners in order to reach that goal. And so this strategic plan specifically calls out working with adult learners and improving access and success. So from that strategic plan, the council then got a group together and they created an action plan moving up, which I know in your first session, Dallas went through. But this outlines kind of different aspects or different actions that can be taken to improve both accessibility and success of adult learners. And specifically talks about the simplifying the admission to intake process. And then even more specific, calls out this kind of work around mapping the student experience during onboarding. So this project is specifically comes from this plan, this action plan, and that work. So it does talk about student journey mapping the onboarding experience. We kind of expanded the scope a little bit to include process mapping, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But just kind of talking a little bit about kind of what we learned through this process and what we've learned just through research. And this is not going to come as any surprise to any of you that work with adult learners, is what do adult learners need when we think about their access and their success, as well as kind of onboarding specifically. And we know that these are three of the main things. So affordability, holistic student services, and flexibility. And so when these three things are in place, as well as a good onboarding experience, we know that students have a greater chance of being successful, of remaining enrolled and getting their credential. So I will share these slides if you want after, and this information will be on there. I'm not going to go through specifically. But then that comes to the question of, why do you focus on onboarding? And when I was writing up the reports for this project, I came up with this idea that onboarding, well, I didn't come up with this idea, but I like this phrase to say that onboarding is a first impression experience, right? Like, we have a lot of first impression experiences, and think if you were to go into a store or on a website, and that first impression, like if that was frustrating, if it was challenging for you, what will your reaction be? For some people, I mean, I think I've had experiences where I've walked into stores and I leave because it's not a great experience. It's not something that I want to kind of continue to be when there's other places that might be more welcoming. So why onboarding? Well, we know that effective onboarding programs foster a sense of community and connection, and we know that adult learners have shared through research that they want that. Even though they're not traditional students and they might not be on campus, they still want to have a sense of belonging. Why? Well, because belonging improves academic performance and retention rates, and fosters mental well-being. And I say that because I think right now we are focusing on this idea of students' mental health and mental well-being being, very important for student success. Otherwise, students who participate in comprehensive onboarding activities, research shows they're actually more likely to persist through kind of challenges and obstacles. So if you set them up for success, when they do hit, they tend to be more resilient. That you do hit road bumps down the road, they'll persist. And some research shows that students who have great onboarding experiences are 35 times more likely to have a great overall university experience. So I think this focus on onboarding is a good one. And I think it was a great opportunity to kind of look at that through this project. I will say that student journey mapping, as we talk about that in a bit, can be used for a number of different aspects with the adult learners. It is not necessarily onboarding that you need to apply it to. But onboarding is a good start, and we have a lot of resources around that now. So really quickly, like the what, why, how of this project. So it was designed to improve the adult learner onboarding experience by identifying and addressing barriers to matriculation. As I said, it's really focused on access and success and contributing to the 60-30 educational attainment goal. We engaged cross-functional teams from 2 institutions. It was a pilot to begin with. In mapping exercises. The 2 institutions that were selected after a call for interest were Northern Kentucky University and Kentucky State University. And you'll see examples of what we did with them in the next few slides. We mapped the experience from both the learner's perspective, which is a student journey map, and the institutional perspective, which is process mapping. And this is where we expanded the scope more than what the action plan said. And this is because looking at it from both sides really creates a more holistic or robust view of what's going on with the onboarding process. And I think it proved to be a great approach that we learned a lot from. Then I worked on analyzing these maps and developed a set of recommendations that you are able to see if you go to the toolkit, or the website. So I'm not going to go into details. I'm happy to answer questions about some of the findings if you're interested. But I did want to, I think Dallas shared with you maybe the toolkit or some videos. But this is a site. I put the link in the chat when I began because I knew I would not be able to do it now. I'd be fumbling around trying to, but this is what you'll see. The image on the left is what you'll see when you open that site, and the icons on the bottom, you can select either of them and they will take you to a page. I just want to kind of share that there's this toolkit, and you are the first to really be to see it and to get to know it, because it's not even exactly finished yet. We have one more document that I'm working on, but it was sent to Lily Massa McKinley yesterday and shared with her for the first time. And so if you are interested, you can kind of click through those drop downs, and really it's a how-to guide on how to do the work that we did with both Northern Kentucky and Kentucky State University. So
Well, if I could jump in there for just a
yeah.
second and just say the toolkit is fantastic. I really like the way that you've done this and are working that out to share this information across. I also included a clip of your video on student journey mapping. So they've got that too. If you want to go see it, it's in there. It's all in there. It's a great document to really help.
Great, thank you. And thank you for the feedback. It's been really fun to kind of put this together and recognize being able to provide resources to all of Kentucky institutions, not just these pilot projects, but then use those pilots to kind of develop something that can be replicated. And I will say there are several training videos, so it's not just student journey mapping. That's one of them. And I apologize for the 30 minutes multiple times that you're going to have to hear my voice, but it is there are videos on process mapping, student journey mapping, driver diagrams, and action plans, and hopefully they'll be useful. I always recommend that people watch them on like 1.5 speed, because apparently like I sound better and I don't sound like I'm talking as slow. But that might be the the native New Yorker in me who likes people who talk fast. So okay, so that's kind of the project overview. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions about that. But what I'm going to do is move on to talk a little bit about student journey mapping. Let me just a second. So I lost all of you for a second. Okay, so what is student journey mapping? And if I'm going to open up the thing, I'm wondering at a show of hands, and I know a lot of you have your videos off, or you can kind of raise your hand in the video. I'm wondering how many of you have either heard of student journey mapping and or have participated in a student journey mapping experience? Okay, we got one that has, others. Okay, so this is not generally, for some of you, this is not a new or novel concept, but for others, this is a brand new thing. So, so what is student journey mapping? So a journey map in general is a visualization of the process an individual goes through to accomplish a goal. And journey mapping is a tool that has emerged along with kind of e-commerce and the internet through marketing, right? Which is it's about the user experience. And then, years later, after it was being used in the business world, higher education started to take notice and bring it into our space. And we come up with student journey mapping, which is a tool for capturing, understanding, and assessing a student's interaction across all our specific components. I will say that early use cases of student journey mapping looked at the entire student life cycle, and still does, except for I think in more recent times we've been able to really understand how to apply this to smaller sections, like not just having to look at the full student life cycle, but just a particular experience of a student. And I think that that's really valuable and doesn't feel as overwhelming as looking maybe across the entire student life cycle. So what makes student journey mapping different than, say, process mapping, which people typically are more familiar with, is that it takes the perspective of the student, and that is the most important thing. That you are always answering or filling out the student journey map from the perspective of the student, not about what the organization does, not what the institution provides the student, but what the student experiences. And this is one thing that I did find in our pilot and working with both institutions was there was a lack of understanding around how a student experiences onboarding. They know what they do, they know the steps that they take to, or what they want a student to do. But for both institutions, understanding that journey, there really wasn't a great understanding about exactly how a student was navigating through onboarding. And the other thing I would say about the student journey mapping piece is that it creates this rich collection of information that's not just about process, but we talk about emotions. How does a student feel when they're going through this experience, and what are the significant interactions? And then you use all of that information to identify pain points and opportunities. And that's really the meat of all of this, is that you're able to take those pain points and then identify improvement opportunities, and then move forward with improvement plans from that. So this just on the right in the green box, you'll see there's just a few of kind of the benefits of why we do student journey mapping, and oftentimes great little tidbits to have when you're trying to convince higher ups to maybe fund a project around student journey mapping, to say why this is important. So again, I'll share, well, you'll have these slides, and you have more information on the toolkit website. So just quickly gonna look at some of the things that we did. When we talk about student journey mapping and taking the student's perspective, one of the tools that we use in order to keep groups grounded in the student perspective are student personas and empathy maps. And these two were developed specifically for Northern Kentucky University. And luckily, Northern Kentucky University has a strong commitment to adult learners, and as such has created this adult and transfer center. That group collects regular data from their students through surveys and focus groups. And so they have a lot of data that we were able to then use to understand who their students are. Personas are not a particular student, and they're not a stereotype. A persona is kind of an archetype. So what is a collection of students, adult learners, what are those shared experiences that they have? These personas and empathy maps and the ones developed for Kentucky State University are in the toolkit, as well as templates to be able to do this work, and some instructions around that. So this is really a kind of one of the things that should be done before you start student journey mapping, is really understanding who your students are, inviting them into the process, and learning about what their experience, what their feelings and motivations and goals are. So what does a student journey map even look like? So this is the Kentucky State Student University journey map that was developed, and it's definitely lo-fi kind of, Lily and Dallas were involved in one of our journey mappings, but it's literally a 3-foot by 4-foot poster on a wall and a lot of Post-it notes. If this is something that you're interested in doing, the poster template is actually in the toolkit. You can have it printed out, and then, have someone facilitate this. But we developed this journey map over the course of a few hours with a cross-functional team that represented all the different offices that were involved in onboarding a student. And then what happens is that this turns into this. This is the final journey map. As you can see, you're like, well, how did all those Post-its turn into all these words? And that's the magic of, I guess, what my work is to turn the information that we've collected and put it into kind of an organized fashion. And the shaded areas at the bottom are pain points and opportunities. And if you have a chance to look at these, it's very hard. They're very dense documents, but you can go in their PDFs and you can zoom into them on the web, on the toolkit, both for Kentucky State and for Northern Kentucky University. So because Dallas sent out some clips and because he provided the toolkit, I am not going through like instructions of how to do student journey mapping, but just wanted to give you all an overview of what it is, and really kind of set it up for your breakout groups. And here's just some questions to think about. This project that I worked on was really about onboarding, but it doesn't have to be, right? So you might decide onboarding is a great starting point, but how can, thinking about how you can use student journey mapping to improve the adult learner experience. And you might be like, well, I don't know. So then think about it a little bit more, as in, what are some of the barriers that So adult students that you're working with, what are some of the complaints that they have? What are some of the frustration points? What are those barriers that they are facing to either hamper their transition from admission to enrollment to persistence, or persistence to graduation, right? So at any of those points, you want to look at those barriers and be able to then say, well, what's the process? What is the experience they're going through? And then think around what the outcomes will be removing those barriers on student access, retention, and success, given that those are the strategic priorities. Well, that's, I know it's a quick whirlwind tour of kind of the adult learner onboarding project and student journey mapping. But Dallas asked me to keep it short, and so I'm happy to come back and do more training or whatnot, or you can watch the videos, obviously. But I am going to stop sharing my screen and really just open the opportunity to say if anyone has any questions and or thoughts about, before you kind of go into your breakout sessions, thoughts about how this might be used at your institution, just to kind of prime the pump before you start, you go into your breakout groups.
And let me just tag on to that. We're going to do a breakout session where I'm going to ask you all to share with one another how you might work with this at your institution. And Nicole, you've done a great job at teeing this up. I think one of the really big things, and would love to hear folks' thoughts, anyone that went to the mental health convening last week about student wellness and how this connects. Lily, you mentioned it yesterday in one of our meetings. I think it's a real key there, but I don't want to stop any questions that you might have for Nicole on that line too. Go ahead, Thomas.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, but I'm going to try to synthesize them from the video that I had seen that Dallas you shared, which was great introduction. Sorry, my dog sees the mailman. Um, so I'm trying to understand the personas, and you talked about in your video about collecting data, and especially the qualitative data to come up with creating these personas. So I was curious. So I work in a program. We are a bachelor's degree program in online learning and organizational learning and leadership. So I'm thinking about all the different sources of data that we can bring together to try to create personas. But I guess are there any practices or good questions that could be asked to try to get data that really lends itself well to building a persona?
Yes. So, and one thing I was thinking about adding to the toolkit. So I would say that focus groups as well as surveys are good starting points for collecting this data. Obviously, it's the questions you ask. But I will also say that there's no rule that says you can't have students in the room when you are developing a student journey map. And it's actually really valuable to have them in the room, 1 or 2 or 3, to kind of keep you grounded in making sure that the student experience. I like to say to students, okay, it's your job to make sure that we're being honest about, we're not making assumptions, and we're not moving kind of beyond this, or we're not talking about the ideal. We're actually talking about the reality, right? So so that's one way, right, is to actually invite students into the process. As far as a survey, I actually developed, Kentucky State University didn't have a qualitative data, so we actually had to develop a survey for them, and I based that off of Northern Kentucky's. I will add that, actually, Lily, I just kind of had a moment yesterday where I was like, oh, I should add this. I will add the survey questions to the toolkit as a template. That way you're able to use some of that, or to kind of see that. But really what we're asking them is what was their experience? What were they like? If you look at the student journey map template, we're kind of asking them all the different boxes that you have, right? Like, what did you go through? What did you feel? And that kind of, we're tailoring it to that. Focus groups is probably the most valuable type of information to collect. I would say definitely doing multiple focus groups is important, because for bias and kind of, I would say that if you can only do 1 or 2, though, some information is better than no information, right? We get hung up on this in academia. We tend to get hung up on the kind of, research protocols, and yet I think when we're doing this, we'd like to say that some data is definitely better than none. And for the focus groups, I think one of the most important things is understanding how the student experiences whatever it is that you're looking at. So if it's registration of classes, right? Like, there's a process that you all think that the students are taking to register. That is not what you're going to journey map. Right? Like, you are going to map the journey of how the student actually does it. Because you don't, like, the fact that you have a process and you think that they're doing it is not the point, right? They might not be going through it that way, and therefore their experience might actually be hampered by something because of the way that you've designed it. I always say, and I think it's on one of the slides, which we have to make a shift from designing processes for students to designing them with them. And that's, that is a key to a lot of this work. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you so much. And I'm just trying to think about, what does it look like going from, we've got this data, to developing it. It made it seem like it was one persona, or at least that's one of the examples. I imagine it could be more than one, but I guess that's where the like coding and analysis to try to find themes to do.
Yeah.
Am I on this right
Yeah.
track here?
Absolutely. And so I will say that one of the things that I have been toying with or using or testing has actually been using AI to use to develop these personas or personas in general. So de-identifying anything with regards to the data, really making it, you know, kind of clean, and then putting it into an AI, whether, you know, whichever is your preferred AI, to ask it to create a persona, because there are certain standards of a persona. Like they're not very different. They have very set things. And so I use that as sometimes as a starting point, especially for like Northern Kentucky that had a lot of data, a lot of focus groups, a lot of survey data, a lot of comments that were just, you know, obviously we can go through them, but I'm one person. So I toyed with and kind of tested that and definitely used that as a starting point to then develop it. So I found it useful. If you're comfortable using AI, it is a way to, it is an opportunity to help with the development of personas.
Other questions? Well, Nicole, you have given us a lot of stuff to think about. And I think there's great opportunity here. The work you're doing with NKU and K-State is tip of the iceberg. So excited to see where we're going to go with this next. And going back to my earlier comment about the mental health convening last week, you know, one of the things that Lily shared with us in one of our meetings was one of the two biggest things was belonging, and Lily helped me with the second one. I think it was
Student basic needs.
yes, basic needs. Okay. And we have to understand where the student's coming from, getting their story. And I think this will really help us to do that. I saw something pop up in the chat as I was talking. Okay, yeah, Lisa, I agree that AI approach really got me thinking about that.
I think I just to say on the AI approach, I think it's a matter of individuals' comfort with using it, and then also just want to stress this idea of cleaning the data as much as possible, or completely of any identifying information of the university. So it does still take time, right? Like taking out anything that would reference a particular university or a student. So, and I would say that with AI, it's a starting point. It's not I didn't, you know, you don't take what it gives you and just copy and paste it into a persona. There's more of a human element to understanding that and developing it. But it is a good way to just kind of start thinking. It's also, you know, for me, it was like, okay, well, where does somebody in Kentucky who goes to Northern, you know, an adult learner in Northern Kentucky, like, where do they live, right? Because a persona has information about where the person lives, what they come from, right? So like, what are the main occupations? So instead of going to like, you know, the Bureau of Labor Statistics to understand what the occupations are, it just kind of helps speed up the process. And Dallas, I wanted to say my next meeting got canceled. So are you okay if I stick around?
Of course, of course. We're going to go into a breakout time. Let me go ahead and do a screen share again. And there we go. We're back into this. So thank you so much, Nicole, for what you presented. We've got the video on there. Please go to the toolkit. But what I'd like to do is to go into a session of a little bit of time in breakout rooms to talk about how do you think you can use student mapping to better understand your student population, sharing with one another ideas, and just brainstorming some of the benefits and challenges, and then how you might create an approach to that as well, something that's value added. So I'm going to ask our fearless Zoom master, Nan, to set us up in some breakout rooms. We're going to take about 10 minutes to do this. And then we'll come back and briefly talk about that. So if you would, please have someone that would be willing to share what your group has come up with. And I'm going to take the time down to 7 minutes because I want to make sure we get to the next part of our discussion for this month. So Nan, if you could hit that group. And we'll talk about what we thought about. And I was in group one. So group one, let's go first. Matt?
So absolutely, I had the pleasure to be in group one as well, and this has been very apropos for me. I was telling my particular breakout room, I've done something similar, this journey mapping thing at a previous institution, and if I recall correctly, it was like 50 plus steps for a student to go from a prospective student to actually being on our campus, and that opened up a lot of eyes. And in our group, we talked about, you've got to think about your different populations, where they're coming from. Are they residential? Are they on campus? Are they online? Right? Different online programs. You may never meet the student. They may never be in your state. So I thought that was a very apropos observation. One story I shared. I run the career services unit here at Murray State, and a few years ago, our student team came to us with the idea of, could, instead of having one email address, one house account that we basically give out publicly, if you need any career services, email us, msu.careerservices@murraystate.edu. They were getting emails from all kinds of different populations, all kinds of different clients, as we call them. So there could be employers, it could be students, it could be parents, it could be faculty, it could be staff, it could be friends in the community, whoever. Everybody would email the email address, and some of our team would have to divvy those emails out to the right staff member in the office. And they said, hey, wouldn't it be better if we just had an email for each of these groups? So if you're an employer, send it to this email. And if you're a student, make sure you send this email. And we sort of felt that might get a bit complicated. And it may make our lives a little bit easier on our end, but it would make things a little tough for our clients, because then they would have to look at this website and figure out, well, what email do I send to, right? And so we took that idea under consideration. We didn't implement it, of course, but I think it's important to kind of look at our operations from the perspective of our customers. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. So it was a really good discussion all the way around.
Anybody else in group one want to add to that? All right, group two.
Nikki, do you want to share? I think you had, is she still, yeah, she is.
Yes, I can share. I was just talking about how our college has three specific recruiters, or three recruiters specific to different groups. So for instance, I am the only adult recruiter, so I focus on the adult population. We have a high school recruiter, and then we have another recruiter who focuses on newcomers. And we have one or we talked about it, and we have the same type of journey, but there's different things that each group goes through. So I just asked Nicole if she suggests that we have a different journey map for each group, since they are going through a different process. And she brought up the point of how sometimes, in colleges, adult learners will receive emails about housing, which we don't have at Sky CTC, but for instance, here, if a student is 25 years or older and they apply to our college, they receive my direct contact. Nobody else receives that. So they have a completely different journey at that point because they received a new piece of information. So I just asked her, our college just started last week with talking about journey mapping and doing a little bit of work. And I actually brought that up last week, or I thought I didn't bring it up, but I'm going to bring it up with the next one because it made me sit and think when we mapped out a student's journey, we mapped it out as a student's journey when they're coming to our college. We didn't map it out as different groups of students. And I think it's important that we focus on different groups because they are going through different journeys.
Wow, then that sounds like this was a very timely discussion for you. All right, anyone else in group 2 that want to add? Group 3.
I'm not sure what group we were in. Were we group 3? No one else is talking.
Okay,
Jamie?
Yes, we were group 3.
Okay,
okay.
do you want to share, Jamie?
I'll be glad to. And really one of the things I was sharing with them is that our college has just participated in a journey mapping day. And what we did was we did focus on an adult learner. And KCTCS as a whole has personas out there, and we looked at which personas were most populated within our college, and we chose one of those. So in doing that, we had a phenomenal time with it. We had the adult learner. She had 2 children. And so just mapping that process, I think, opened the eyes of a lot of our student affairs staff members when they said, oh, well, I see this a lot. I see this a lot. And other people are like, well, I don't see that at all. So it allowed us to really look at communications, to look at necessities and things like that. So our next goal, which is this coming Friday, is to actually take that same student, and we took them from prospect to enrolled, but now we want to take that same student from enrolled to continuing student. So how does that process change, and what does it look like for this student going forward for the next semester and trying to get enrolled again? And are there other barriers now that student has noticed that they didn't notice before? And how are they feeling about their semester? And are we asking them, how they're feeling? Are we checking in with them to make sure that they're not overwhelmed and frustrated and all of those emotions that kind of make us go, I'm not sure if I can do this. So I thought it was a great event for us as far as what we learned in the process. We are right now putting together kind of that deep document to bring all those pieces together, and I look forward to being able to use that.
Wow, fantastic. Doing exactly what Nicole said. You can use this journey mapping for so many different areas.
And I'll just add on to that, because one thing that we brought up, we were talking about all these personas that we might be developing at our different institutions, and how it would be really neat to kind of have a hopper of Kentucky student personas so that, especially when we think about the transfer student journey mapping workshop that we had earlier, because we developed a lot of personas for that workshop, 5, and then we had our Kentucky State and our NKU personas. We've got a bunch of KCTCS personas that have been developed or that are being developed. And, these are all students based on Kentucky, or all personas based on Kentucky students. So there could be similarities that could help Murray State or U of L or anybody else develop their own personas in the future with tweaks or modifications based on their own student data. So like just trying to facilitate a more efficient process, but also as we think about transferring students, like, oh, this student started at Somerset and now they're headed to EKU. That's a typical transfer journey. So let's really maximize this. I think that would be really great. So I would love to maybe in the impact exchange, I think we could have a whole tab of, student personas and share them. We could share them together.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And if we have a persona coming from one school to another, that helps us to get an idea of what the students look like and the different dynamics that come along with that. So, wow, that's fantastic. All right. Well, it sounds like it was a good breakout. Nicole, again, thank you. You've really generated a lot of activity here. So we're excited to see where that will go.
It sounds like everybody, a lot of people are already ahead of the curve doing this work. It's great to hear.
Sure, exactly. All right, so we are almost at time. Great discussion. So we've got about 7 minutes. I do want to jump into the very next thing that I want to share. And that is some information based on our last meeting. There was a lot of discussion about funding and how we can arrive at different things. So I went back and I've asked Sean, Lily, help me with this last name.
McKiernan.
Thank you. Old age, you start forgetting things. And about the performance-based funding model and how this works, and asking him to help me see how I can share information with you all. So these are some fun facts that I found out about it. Don't nail me down on them. These are just an initial discussion, and I'm going to dig more into it to give you more information back. But based on the 2024 PBF, there's about $188 million out there, and out of that amount, 11% of it has been marked toward adult learners. Okay, and these are based on the student credit hours. And in that, what Sean shared with me is that based on the weighting of adult learners, they return to the university about $117 per credit hour taken. So that's a pretty significant amount for each adult learner that you have. Now, that is $46 more per credit hour than other students. And when I say other students, those would be your traditional students, graduate level students, out-of-state students. So in the adult learner framework, there is a return on investment from attracting folks into our program. Nikki, this might be a good bit of information for you and what you're doing out there as a recruiter on why your work is important. And so this will be in our slides. This does address understanding that financial assistance, what goes on. Now, please do keep in mind, though, and Sean reiterated this a number of times, this is in the grand scheme of the whole performance-based funding, and it's about 30% of the overall, but these are some significant numbers. And this is just on adult learners who are in Kentucky and what the return on them being a student in your school or university is all about, and why we need to look at how we're using these resources to attract more adult learners. I do have a question. It's a Mentimeter poll. We have just a minute, so I want to try this because you know what? I'm new at Mentimeter. I'm trying to get the hang of all this stuff. And if you would, please go to menti.com and just answer the question. You just need to select one of them. What's your understanding of the BPF? Okay. And you can see, I think you can click on the right side of that screen and it'll take you to Mentimeter. And while you're doing that, I'm going to switch to my Mentimeter poll, which is what I think I'm supposed to do. Is that correct, Lily? Lily's schooling me on this.
Sorry, one more time. What'd you ask? I'm responding to someone in the chat.
Oh, very good. Well, you keep doing that. Oh my goodness, that's not where I wanted it to go. So I'm trying to show the Mentimeter poll. I think I hit present. And there it is. Let me stop sharing and then I'll share that. And are we seeing it?
Sorry.
Yes, we are. Okay, great. No, you're not seeing it. Let me try this again. All right, so there are our results. A lot of folks, well, some folks not familiar with it. Give you another minute to get out there and
So if you don't have the QR code anymore, you can just go to menti.com. And then once you get to that voting page, you'll put in the code at the top here, 8713-2109, and the poll should appear once you join.
as we're getting more folks jumping out there, I guess my question is where do we go from here with this kind of information? Is this something that you might be able to use to in your program? Is there an avenue that you might need to learn more about it by talking with the financial folks at your institution? What are your thoughts? You can drop it in the chat or share it out here.
Right.
And actually, let's do this. Let's push this question to our next time that we might get together, because I do want to move along and be respectful of your time. I think we see that there's a lot, and you can go ahead and continue to input into this because it will continue to collect the information. But I want to finish with just a last comment. I want to move along. There we go. So this was the last of the 3 meetings that we had said that we would do from the adult learner convening that we had earlier this year. My question to you, do you want to continue on doing this over the summer? Do you want to take a pause over the summer and pick back up in the fall? What are your thoughts? Is this something that's adding to what you understand in the way of adult learners and credit for prior learning? All right, Dee, go ahead.
All right, good morning, Dallas. I think we should continue on over the summer. That way it stays fresh on our minds, because if we're off for a few months and then jump back into it, we may not really remember everything. So continuing this throughout the summer will be very beneficial to a lot of us.
Okay.
That's my opinion. I can't speak for everybody else.
Right. So let me ask it this way then. This might be a better way. I'm going to stop sharing. And if you're interested in continuing this through the year, raise your hand. Let me know. Yes. Raise your hand if you want to do it over the summer. Okay. Seeing a lot of folks say that.
And I think just it would be great to survey all of the participants from the last 3 meetings, Dallas, as well, just to get their feedback, because this is just a end of the day, 11:02 kind of a poll right now.
Right. Well, we'll do that. We'll send out a survey and ask everyone.
Yeah. But I'm glad we've had good energy right here. This is great.
Yep. Yep. Excellent. Great stuff, folks. It's 11:02. So thank you for sticking with us, and we'll go ahead and end this meeting. Nan, if you can stop our session there, that would be great. And thank you all for joining us today. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.